After the speaker before me talked a bit about digitalization and what kind of business models, maybe all kind of industries will be disrupted, I think we can take that away. And what we've seen in the last 1 or 2 years, that many corporates are reacting on this trend by starting own incubators, starting own acceleration programs, basically trying to somehow get a hold on these new business models with new entities through incubation. It's good to make the effort in that direction, but actually with whomever you talk that has some knowledge about incubation, about company building, not many people are convinced that corporate incubators really have strong chances of becoming successful. So when I prepared this presentation, I discussed the 95% failure rate that I predict for corporate incubators. And some of my other friends who also run incubators said, I don't believe in the 95%. The failure rate will be higher. So let's talk about the success principles of incubation and then have a look at the difficulties corporates have when starting own incubators or own company builders. A brief personal introduction. I'm a serial entrepreneur, 31 years old. I started, however we counted, 5 to 6 companies. Now that created about 600 jobs within the last years. Most of them in Berlin, some in San Francisco, some in Seoul. And 3.5 years ago, I started HitFox Group. We were a startup initially, then moved to become an incubator. And the rest of the story comes a bit later. Today, HitFox Group has 10 companies. We've been growing our revenues 600% in 2013, and it was profitable. We announced 15 million EBIT last year in the group. We have now 300 employees from 40 nations. So we are kind of a pretty global company builder. Our approach is to pick high growth markets and then not only to start one company in each market, but start a group of synergetic speedboats that all act individually and stay fast, but that create synergies among each other and within the creation of these speedboats. So we started in game distribution as a startup. I can say the initial business model we started with 3.5 years ago that failed. So the business model did not work out, but we basically built a successful organization, a strong organization, and an organization that was able to adapt very fast and to cope with the change. So we pivoted the initial business model to game advertising, found good success in advertising, started many more companies there. From there, moved into data-driven businesses, which was the next logical step from advertising. And from there, the next market we are soon announcing, a very interesting one, is fintech, so basically disrupting banking companies and insurances. And 2 weeks ago, we have been named Entrepreneur of the Year for our approach to incubating digital companies from Ernst & Young. Let's look at the corporate world. So there were many, many incubators that kind of found their way to the world within the last 1 or 2 years. Now Lufthansa announced an incubator. Before that, there were the media companies. There is Deutsche Bahn. Basically, it seems every corporate feels the need of creating an own vehicle for innovation, and oftentimes an incubator is the choice. The question is, can this really be successful? Is an incubator a business model that will work for corporates, or are there smarter ways to move in? So what are the success factors of digital incubation? From our point of view, you have to focus yourself. You really have to focus. You have to pick something where you are really strong and then stick to this area until you really mastered it, because only with focus comes the synergies that you need to successfully incubate, and only with focus, as an incubator, you can provide real value to the entrepreneurs you're working with. And the number one success factor of starting successful companies as an incubator is really attracting the best entrepreneurs. So attract really entrepreneurs that think innovative, that are willing to go the extra mile, that really are entrepreneurs by heart. And this is, in my opinion, the number one success factor of any incubator. And then the question is how to attract these entrepreneurs. By providing value to them, so the synergies you create, but also by having the right incentive structures. And that means, in the end, giving out large chunks of equity to entrepreneurs in companies that have a setup so strong that the entrepreneur himself could alone not create this company. So it's, in the end, about creating an incentive structure that basically is not going into adverse selections so that you only get the weak entrepreneurial talent, which is probably the number one challenge of incubators out there. And then, as there is so many change in the underlying industries, digitalization is happening, then it's really about being super fast, about seeing a great idea out there in the market, and basically being prepared that if you are not taking this idea now, somebody else will have the same or a similar idea somewhere else in the world. So you have to be super fast within the decision-making process in the incubator, but you also have to be super fast and give the right culture into your companies to also make decisions going very fast. So what you should not do as an incubator is trying to make the decisions for your startups. Support them, coach them, be close to them, but basically believe that in the end they are closer to the market. They need to make the decisions as entrepreneurs. You need to stay super fast, and this is a crucial success factor in any market, especially in any given fast market. And then there is synergies you want to create between your companies. And to create these synergies, it's important that you kind of find your focus. So either you focus on a certain industry that you're going to disrupt the market with several startups, or you focus on certain other core competencies that you have where basically you can leverage the learnings you make in one startup already in the next. The people you wanted to hire for this startup, which were good but not a particular fit, can then already start in that company. And overall, as an incubator, you can afford to hire experts, such as, for example, going into the banking sector, an expert on basically governance and on regulatory stuff, where basically one startup itself could not afford to hire this expert, but within the portfolio of your synergetic startups, you can afford to hire this expert. So you really want to look for creating synergies within your companies so that each company in itself is already strong enough to be successful alone, but through the synergies you have in your portfolio of different speedboats, you in the end will outcompete the competition. And then it's all about the culture that you create in your startups and in your group overall. So you want a culture where people can make fast and brave decisions that should oftentimes be right, but sometimes will be wrong. And nobody should be punished for making basically a decision that sometimes go wrong. And then you want to make sure everybody in your team really feels as an entrepreneur, as a co-owner of the company, basically. Oftentimes in good companies, 50% of the employees get shares, basically feel they are part of it, and are willing to go this extra mile. And so you want them to be co-owners of the company that you create with them. And looking at these basic success factors that we and other incubators see for incubation, when applying them to, is this something corporates are in general good in? And are there examples of very successful corporate incubators? Then let's briefly go over it. So if we look at focus, yes, this is something corporates can achieve, and corporates will do good to focus on a specific area of an incubator, so really set the field of where they want to compete and not start a broad incubator such as just a general digital incubator. The digital value chain is so broad now, you really have to focus on some parts of it. Focus is possible, but then we came to the biggest problem. I haven't seen a corporate incubator that managed to attract real entrepreneurs. And that's the main problem. So why would a real entrepreneur, a strong entrepreneur that has a lot of options, decide, I'm going to become an entrepreneur with, let's say, Deutsche Bahn? It's not very likely that he will find entrepreneurial mentors and the real spirit there to be an entrepreneur at heart. So what happens is basically an adverse selection. Real entrepreneurs find it oftentimes tough to work within a corporate environment, and that's a big problem. Going along with incentive structures, that's probably not many corporates that would give out a lot of equity depending on the value that they provide. Then fast decisions is also a topic. Some companies will be better, some be worse, but in general, decisions will be never as fast as if there was one or a group of real entrepreneurs that basically own the incubators, that are close to the companies, which in the end can support the decisions together with the portfolio company. Coming to synergies, yes, there can be good synergies with the existing portfolio and also among the portfolio of a corporate incubator. So that's, again, an indicator that it could work. But oftentimes then the barriers between the startups and the access to the corporate resources are too high to create real synergies. And then culture-wise, it's also not a secret that the typical corporate culture basically focused on slowly growing or maintaining big existing streams of revenue are the right ones to adapt fast in very fast-moving markets. So looking at it theoretically, it seems obvious that the success chances of corporate incubators are not really high based on this success principles for incubators. And looking at what basically happened since many corporate incubators have started, there are many examples where actually exactly those things, or then sometimes individual reasons of one or the other corporate incubator led to a dissatisfying result. So either the incubator closed or never has ever heard of a successful company that came out of the incubator. So while these incubators were started with a lot of positive attention, in the end, as corporates learned it's not going that fast, it's not as successful, then in the end, they lost interest within their company. And many of the corporate incubators that have been started are closed. Many others are in difficulties. And it's not likely that they will recover from it, because then also the incubation business is a business that lives from positive traction, from attracting more talent, more resources, basically because you are already successful in what you're doing. So it's not looking so good for corporate incubators, but we still think there are ways for corporates to leverage what they have to go into this market. And we think this will usually be the case in partnering with existing incubators or with true entrepreneurs that can lead the corporate incubators, but then under a cap table where they basically own the majority, make the decisions, and have a partnership agreement with the corporates to cooperate on the resources and maybe also to cooperate on the exits. So in the end, corporates with their resources, corporates with their experience, corporates also with basically their existing network, and also with the reputation which they have, which can be super important, especially in complex markets, such as, for example, for financial products, where trust is very important. So corporates actually can bring a lot to the table for an incubator. It's just not that they will be the best decision makers within the incubators, and that they will be able to funnel the right culture into the incubator. And so it will happen that almost all of the corporate incubators either fail or at least generate at max mediocre results. But there are some chances to make it work, and I think those few incubators that will work will rather be those that seek to partner with incubators out there or with real entrepreneurs that have been very successful within one field and then basically support corporates and go hand in hand with them on the march of creating successful digital business. So that's basically how we see it. I'm obviously very open to your opinions, to your questions, and yeah, happy to have a discussion if there are any questions left. Thank you very much for your attention.